fear is often born from uncertainty, and in Missouri, that uncertainty is buried deep in soil marked by scars, Civil War history, industrial tragedy, and haunting social crises. This Midwestern state has dozens of small towns that give off a cold aura, not merely because of bedtime ghost stories, but because of a combination of dark realities and the remains of past trauma. Many of these places have now lost their populations, leaving empty buildings to rot in the silence of inland forests. Let's explore 15 small towns in Missouri with the most unsettling atmosphere for anyone brave enough to pass through. First, perhaps nothing can match how horrifying this town is. Times Beach is often said to hold a reputation as one of the most toxic and dystopian ghost towns in modern United States history. Its story began in the 1970s, when the underfunded local government hired a contractor to spray oil on dirt roads to control flying dust. Unknown to residents, the oil had been mixed with high-level dioxin chemical waste, one of the deadliest substances ever created by humans. The contamination slowly poisoned the soil, killed livestock, and triggered a mass health crisis among local residents. When the Merrimack River flooded in 1982, the toxic material spread throughout the settlement, forcing the federal government to evacuate all residents and erase Times Beach from the map. Today, the cleaned-up area has been turned into a roadside park, but the absolute silence of this place still radiates a real aura of death. Leaving behind the chemical disaster of Times Beach, we moved to St. Charles County, where a small town called Hamburg had to face an equally horrifying fate because of military intervention. In 1940, all residents of Hamburg and nearby communities were ordered to pack their belongings and leave their ancestral land within only a few weeks. This quiet farming area was seized by the federal government and transformed into the world's largest TNT explosives plant. After the war ended, the factory area was simply abandoned in a state contaminated by heavy chemicals and radioactive waste from the massive nuclear project that followed. The ruins of old tunnels and cracked asphalt roads now covered by brush create a deeply eerie scene in the middle of the Weldon Spring Conservation Area. This place stands as a silent monument to how a civilian community can vanish instantly for military ambition. If Hamburg was destroyed by the machinery of war, the horror in this town was born from within its own social order through real criminal trauma. Skidmore, a small town in Nottoway County, became the center of international attention in 1981 when a local criminal named Ken McElroy was shot dead in broad daylight on the town's main street in front of dozens of eyewitnesses. Reportedly, McElroy had terrorized townspeople for years through arson, rape, and attempted murder without ever truly being touched by the law. The vigilante killing carried out by residents of Skidmore led to a conspiracy of silence, or a mass code of omerta, where to this day, not a single resident has spoken to police about the shooter's identity. The atmosphere in Skidmore is described as cold and full of suspicion, as if everyone is watching one another. This social tension was made even worse by a series of mysterious disappearances and other brutal murders that repeatedly struck this small town in the following decades. While Skidmore is locked in the coldness of street justice, a small town called Melva became a victim of nature's fury, erasing all life within minutes. In 1920, a powerful monster tornado struck this valley settlement at night, flattening almost every wooden building, including the train station, general store, and residents' homes. This sudden disaster killed more than a dozen locals and injured many others in total darkness. Deep psychological trauma and complete economic destruction made the survivors unwilling to rebuild their town. Instead, they chose to leave and let Melva die permanently. Walking through the former site of Melva today reveals a very silent and unsettling scene inside dense forest. Moss-covered cement foundations and old twisted metal, bent by the tornado's force, stand as silent witnesses to nature's deadly rage. The death of Melva by violent wind brings us to the historic Route 66 corridor. Along one part of it, the town of Avilla stands while holding a kind of horror rooted in the trauma of the American Civil War. This town in Jasper County was once targeted by bloody raids from armed groups, leaving many victims buried hastily around the town's outskirts. One of the most famous legends here is the sighting of a headless ghost, known locally as the Rotten Ghost. Today, the atmosphere feels extremely quiet and dead, filled with rows of old two-story brick buildings whose windows are broken and interiors are rotting. Some travelers who dare to spend the night around Avilla's ruins often report seeing faceless black shadows moving quickly through empty corridors. Its stigma as a cursed town has made Avilla lose its appeal to new investors, turning it into an eerie pocket of poverty. Stepping out of Avilla's heavy borderland atmosphere, we move to the banks of the Mississippi River, specifically to Hannibal, whose tourist-friendly facade hides an underground network of darkness. Hannibal is known globally as the childhood town of legendary writer Mark Twain, but the labyrinth cave system beneath it, Mark Twain Cave, is filled with stories of disappearances and horrifying medical experiments. An eccentric doctor named Joseph Nash McDowell once bought this cave to store his daughter's preserved body inside a copper cylinder for supernatural experiments. Dr. McDowell was also known for illegally digging up graves to obtain fresh corpses for his medical school practice, sparking public outrage in the past. Hannibal's eerie atmosphere spreads from the darkness of those cave passages to its old Victorian residential areas. There are many reports of spirits of lost children appearing inside the cave, along with the shadow of Dr. McDowell, who is said to still wander in search of his daughter's body. The mad experiments inside Hannibal's underground cave seem to find their twin in the mystical atmosphere surrounding the small town of Brumley in Miller County. This remote settlement has become widely talked about because of an old suspension bridge, the Brumley Swinging Bridge, stretching over a quiet stream in the middle of dense forest. This wooden bridge, built in the early 20th century, is surrounded by dark stories of fatal accidents, illegal hangings, and mystical rituals often performed beneath the bridge during moonless nights. The bridge's current, unstable swaying and loud, wooden creaking when the wind blows create a visual sensation that sharply raises adrenaline. People around this area tend to avoid the bridge after sunset because of many reports of mysterious crying sounds and ghostly miners floating above the surface of the pitch-black river. Another layer is reflected in the castle house. This property, owned by Reverend Jacob Shaw Macomb and dating back to 1859, is believed to be extremely haunted. So many strange stories surround this place. Over the decades, at least 5 former homeowners and several patients are believed to have died on the property, especially in the main bedroom. From the terrifying creak of Brumley's Bridge, we move to the echo of footsteps on the old stone streets of St. Charles. One of the oldest settlements in Missouri, this city holds a historic district along the Missouri River, colored by stories of public hangings, deadly disease outbreaks, and the history of an abandoned psychiatric hospital. Its main street corridor, paved with old brick, is surrounded by 19th century buildings, whose interiors are still preserved in their original form, complete with stories of ancient soldier spirits. On the outskirts of St. Charles, there are remains of a former medical facility known for its horrifying record of malpractice against mentally ill patients. The atmosphere around this historic area changes drastically after nightfall, becoming cold and oppressive. Black shadows peeking from behind the upper floor windows of empty buildings often become a terrifying sight for paranormal lovers exploring the city. However, if the history of St. Charles is preserved in an old town district, the remains of prosperity in Phoenix have been left to rot and be swallowed by the silence of Greene County's forest. Phoenix was once a highly prosperous marble mining town, producing high-quality building material used to construct grand government buildings across the United States. Phoenix's death came massively when the Great Depression struck the world economy in the 1930s, destroying the construction industry and forcing the company to permanently close the quarry. The town was completely abandoned by its residents and slowly swallowed again by dense forest growth. The ruins of giant concrete walls from the former mine engine room, now filled with large tree roots, create a dystopian view resembling an abandoned ancient temple haunted by silence. The natural ruins of Phoenix present the image of an organic ghost town, but what we find near Carthage, specifically at Red Oak 2, is a very strange artificial manifestation of fear. This place is not a ghost town formed naturally, but an eccentric art project created by artist Lowell Davis. He bought dozens of abandoned original old buildings from real ghost towns across Missouri, then rebuilt them on his private land. The result is a replica, like a ghost town inhabited by rusting iron mannequin figures. Walking through the corridors of Red Oak, 2 creates a powerful and uncomfortable sense of psychological disorientation for daytime visitors. Rows of buildings such as an old school, an antique gas station, and a wooden church stand empty, yet are filled with strange art installations like rusting vehicles occupied by artificial skeletons. The atmosphere here feels like stepping into a frozen nightmare dimension, separated from the modern world around it. Next, we return to the bitter reality of economic failure along Route 66, specifically in the ghost town of Arlington. This town on the banks of the Gasconade River once enjoyed its glory days as a very popular resort getaway for upper-class travelers in the early 20th century. The small town had a luxury hotel complex, beautiful vacation cabins, and water recreation facilities that were always busy. Arlington's decline came tragically because of changes to interstate highway routes that cut off access to the town. Losing tourist traffic caused all commercial businesses in Arlington to go bankrupt one after another in a short time. The town was emptied on a massive scale and has now become private property, completely locked up like a dead city. Rows of decaying wooden cabins, an old swimming pool now filled with black mossy rainwater, and rusting hotel signs create a deeply melancholy and horrifying scene beneath the shelter of tall rock cliffs. Only a few kilometers from the remains of Arlington's resort grandeur, the small town of Spencer stands as another victim of America's road transportation modernization. Although there have been restoration efforts on the exterior facade of its old gas station for historic photography, Spencer's quiet atmosphere cannot be hidden. The area is surrounded by vast wild grasslands that hiss sharply when blown by the wind. The absence of human domestic activity makes Spencer feel deeply foreign, cold, and frightening for drivers who dare to pass through late at night. This small town, which once had an independent gas station, general store, and vehicle repair shop, was completely abandoned by human activity when the new highway route was built away from the original corridor. Life in Spencer died almost instantly, leaving abandoned commercial buildings sitting silently beside the old road. If Spencer died because it was abandoned by highway travelers, Post Oak's disappearance happened because time itself eroded the existence of Missouri's traditional farming communities. This small town was once home to a traditional farming community centered around an old wooden church and a public cemetery complex that had stood since the mid-19th century. Mass urbanization pushed Post Oak's younger generation to migrate to larger cities in search of better livelihoods. Today, Post Oak has lost all of its residential homes, leaving only a severely leaning wooden church and an old cemetery filled with cracked stone markers covered in thorny brush. The eerie feeling reaches its peak in autumn when thick fog descends over the old cemetery. This place radiates absolute loneliness, where the only traces of a human community remain on gravestones slowly worn down by time. Meanwhile, there is tension along a remote dirt road corridor near Joplin, where the darkness of night is always interrupted by a mysterious light anomaly. This legendary supernatural phenomenon, which has terrified people since the 19th century, is known as the Joplin Spook light. It appears as mysterious balls of light in varying sizes, floating, spinning, and changing color unnaturally along a quiet road corridor surrounded by dense forest. Many scientists and geologists have tried to explain this phenomenon as swamp gas or vehicle light reflections from a main highway, but no theory has ever proven it with absolute certainty. Local urban legend offers a darker belief that the glowing ball is the spirit of an old coal miner whose head was severed in a workplace accident, now wandering through the dark forest with a lantern, searching for his missing body part. From the mysterious lights near Joplin's border, our journey ends in St. Genevieve, the oldest settlement town in Missouri, where the architecture alone is enough to send chills down your spine. Founded by French explorers in the mid-18th century, this town has a unique and visually eerie feature: rows of old houses built in the poteau-en-terre style, with original vertical wooden posts driven directly into the ground, creating stiff, somber silhouettes. Hundreds of years of history passing through St. Genevieve have left behind a dense supernatural legacy in every corner of its old district. Walking along St. Genevieve's wooden sidewalks at night gives a cold, oppressive sensation where the shadows of colonial spirits dressed in 18th century clothing are said to move between the wooden walls of its old homes.